I'd like to speak for a moment regarding the video, in response to the video teaching on the rapture, referring to the part where the gentleman spoke about Matthew 24. The context of Matthew 24 is probably shortly prior to the crucifixion of Christ. But it realized that we're talking about 30 AD, 32 AD, 33 AD, somewhere in that region in the first century. And the intended audience of what Jesus had to say there was his questioning apostles, the men he had been teaching for 3 years, who would have to face really a horrible tribulation period ahead, namely a war with the Roman armies, the Roman government, culminating in the complete annihilation of Jerusalem and the temple in 70 AD under Titus, the Roman general. In France, there's a thing called the Arc de Triomphe, Arc of Triumph. You'll see engraved there along the top the looting and pillaging and carrying away of all the treasures of Jerusalem that were taken in the conquering thereof by Titus in 70 AD. We can learn volumes about that time and that era if you read the histories of Josephus, Roman wars with the Jews of the first century. Okay. The intended audience was his disciples, as I have said. How am I doing on time? Okay, I'm fine. Because they had just come out of the temple, the apostles were marveling at the wonderful architecture there. It was a gorgeous building. It was covered in imported white. What was it? I forget the name of the stone. It was white in nature, and could be seen shining from very, very far out in the desert. And Jesus replied that, well, soon it would be nothing but a pile of rubble, saying that one stone would not be left upon another. So at this shocking statement, the disciples said, "Please, you got to tell us what will be the sign of your coming, and what things should we look for?" And Christ began to tell them a list of different things that they should look for. For instance, the abomination that causes desolation, spoken of by Daniel the prophet, actually occurred in the first century when some of them that were alive would have seen it. Namely, that at some point the armies came into the temple and carried in their pagan banners and performed some kind of sacrifice to false gods there. They had a temple to actually see it in. He said, when you see this and when you see that. But this teacher all of a sudden implies real slick that Jesus changed his intended audience without, making that clear to anyone that he was speaking to the Jews of a far distant future, when these things are supposed to happen. So he's busy warning his followers and his dear apostles, who he is about to leave alone in this mess. And he's talking about future people and future tragedies, and they were soon to come to the people in the first century, but today's church are still waiting for all these things, ignoring the clear intention of Christ's teachings when he said, "Some of you standing here shall not have tasted death before the coming of the Son of Man." and this coming of the great and terrible day of judgment of the Lord warned about by all the prophets, specifically John the Baptist, and Christ himself had all the many dire warnings we see, pleading with the Jews to accept him and not receive what would be coming to them that God had warned about many times. Check out the book of Micah. So, or Malachi, I believe. I'm sorry, Malachi. It's the last book of the Old Testament. Read that one and see what God's opinion of his chosen people were and the dire warnings. Because they were a stiff-necked people and they were corrupted and they were evil, and Jesus' generation of them were the worst of all. And he spoke many times of this generation, meaning his contemporaries in the first century, the scribes, the Pharisees, the religious leadership that were so corrupt. Okay, so this was a by the way, excuse me, I'm for stuttering here, but all the things that Christ said would come. And when he said, when you see armies surround Jerusalem, flee to the hills of Judea, pray that it's not on the Sabbath, pray that you're not, have a baby with you, and all these things, pray it's not in wintertime. This was for a first century audience, people who were going to go through something in the first century. He wasn't just blowing smoke about something that was going to happen 2,000-3,000 years later. So get it straight. It's really ridiculous. And without this understanding, you'll never be able to understand Scripture. And it's just a hard-heartedness and a pig-headedness that keeps people denying the very words of their Christ, supposedly, their Lord, to worshiping, false prophets and left behind books and everything else. So if anybody has a response to this, I'd really like to hear it, because I haven't been able to get anybody to help me understand why this is perpetuated like this. It makes no sense, and I have many, many more examples of scriptures that will show that what I'm saying. Christ put a time reference on all these events. He happened to know what he was talking about. He fulfilled them all. It's good news. And the end of the age, by the way, was the end of the old covenant age of sacrifice and rituals that had to be done away with. It was obsolete, to bring in the new age of a new covenant that Christ was bringing. So get that straight also. I thank you, and may God bless us all. Goodbye, YouTube.